Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. We welcome to your online learning initiative, Ekalaiva. I know all of you know cycling and few of you know swimming. So when you're learning cycling, initially when you started learning cycling, you would have fallen down and you would have even got hurt. But still you tried again and again and you succeeded in cycling or swimming. But what made you to succeed in that? That's my question. Can anyone guess? Yes, that must be passion and perseverance, confidence, and never give up idea, never give up attitude, right? Today we are going to learn a lesson, his first flight, from two stories about flying, written by Liam Ho Flaherty. Now we'll see about the author. Liam Ho Flaherty was born 28 August 1896 and he died 7 September 1984. He was a major Irish novelist, short story writer, and must be ranked as one of the foremost socialist writers in the first part of the 20th century, writing about the common people's experience and from their perspective. In this lesson, the author tells us about what type of attitude a person should have to achieve anything. He conveys this message through a young seagull who was afraid to fly in the beginning and how he learned to fly later on. And now let's see the line by line explanation. The young seagull was alone on his ledge. So this is the seagull. So he was alone. Nobody was there with him. So he was in his ledge. Ledge means cliff. Cliff. Have you seen what is cliff? You can see in this picture. It is a high steep. It is a high steep rock. This is a cliff. His two brothers and his sister had already flown away the day before. He had two brothers and a sister. They had learned how to fly and they had flown away. And he had been afraid to fly. But this seagull did not fly because he had not learned how to fly. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. Sometimes he tried. So, taking a little run forward to the brink of the ledge. Brink means here the edge. Edge of a steep place. So he came to the edge of the ledge and attempted, sometimes he tried by flapping his wings, but suddenly he became afraid and gave up the idea of flying. The great expanse of sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down, miles down. So the vast area of water and the distance between the cliff and the sea frightened him. So he didn't try at all. He felt certain that his wings would never support him. So he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge where he slept at night. So certain means here sure. So he was sure that his wings were not strong enough to support for him to fly. So he bent his head and ran back to the little hole where he slept at night. Even when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings, and flew away, he failed to muster up courage to take that plunge which appeared to him so desperate. So his brothers and sisters had far shorter wings than his own. But in spite of that, they ran to the brink and flapped their wings. Brink means what? the edge of the ledge. Flapped their wings and flew away. But this seagull was not courage enough to take plunge, means the dive. And he thought that was impossible for him. Desperate means hopeless. His father and mother had come around, calling to him shrilly, upbraiding him, threatening to let him starve on his ledge unless he flew away. So his father and mother calling to him shrilly. So shrilly means loud voice. Upbraiding him, so they were scolding him. So they were scolding him, threatening him, cautioning him that if he was not going to fly, he had to starve. But for his life of him, he could not move. He thought that if he flew, he would fall and die. That was 24 hours ago. One full day over since his family went away from him. Since then, nobody had come near him. So Since then, nobody was there with him. He was all alone in the cliff. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sister, perfecting them in the art of flight, teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. So the previous day he was watching his parents flying with his brothers and sisters. Also he saw them flying happily in the sky, and he saw his parents teaching his brothers and sister how to fly perfectly and how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. You can see in this picture how the uh, bird skims, that is, it moves slightly just above the surface of the water. He had in fact seen his older brother catch his first herring and devour it standing on a rock while his parents circled around raising a proud cackle. He also saw his older brother catching his first herring, means sea fish. Herring means it's a sea fish. And devour it means he was eating greedily. So he caught his own fish and he was eating greedily standing on a rock while his parents circled around raising a proud cackle. So parents were so proud of him and they raised a proud cackle. Cackle means utter a cry like that of a hen. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau, midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his covered eyes. There was another cliff opposite to the one where the seagull was sitting, and between these two cliffs there was a plateau. Plateau means an elevated flat land. So this is the plateau. So standing on this, walking and standing on this plateau, his siblings and his parents were taunting him. Taunting means scolding him or insulting him, mocking him with his covered eyes. Covered eyes means timidity. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing on his ledge that faced the south. Now the sun was ascending, means it was nearing almost midday. Blazing on his ledge. Blazing means here the sun was very bright and hot on his sledge. The sun was shining very brightly, that was very hot, on his ledge. So the sun was shining on the ledge where the seagull was standing. That cliff was facing the south. He felt that heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. So for one full day he had not eaten. That made him to feel very hot. Okay, and then the heat of the sun made him feel very tired and weak. So he stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge, and standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. So now it wanted to try something. So slowly it stepped out of the brink of the ledge. Brink means that edge of the ledge. Edge of the ledge it came out, and standing now, it's trying now, and standing on one leg, he hid the other leg under his wing, and he closed his one eye, and then the other eye also he closed, and pretended to be falling asleep. So he acted as if it was going to fall asleep. So still they took no notice of him. So they means here his family members, his father, mother, brothers and sister. They didn't take any notice of him, and they didn't bother. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau, dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. So he saw his two brothers and sister, father, mother. They flew enough, and they had their fish. They had their food. They caught the fish and ate. Now it's time for them to take nap. So they were taking nap with the heads. As they were sleeping, the heads sank into their necks. His father was preening the feather on his white back. So his father was preening. He was combing his feather with his beak. Sometimes the birds would clean their feathers with their beak itself. That is what even this father was doing. His father was preening, combing his feather with his beak on his white back. So the back of the seagull would be white in color. Only his mother was looking at him because she was worried as he didn't eat anything one full day. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. Seagull's mother was standing on a little high hump, means a little raised part of the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. Thrust means push with force. So her chest part pushed with force. Now and again she tore at a piece of fish that lay at her feet, and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. So she had a fish at her feet. She tore it now and again and scraped. Scraped means cleaned by rubbing. She cleaned it by rubbing her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened her. So, seeing the fish, he was highly tempted. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. Wet means to sharpen. He too wanted to tear the flesh of the fish and wanted to rub his beak on the rock. Go, 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 he cried, begging her to bring him some food. So he called, saying, Go, go, he called his mother and begged her for some food. Go, call her, she cried, she screamed back derisively. So derisively means mockingly. So she too screamed back mockingly, but he kept calling plaintively. He kept calling sadly, and later a minute or so he uttered a joyful scream. After a few minutes, after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. He gave a joyful scream. He became happy. His mother had picked up a piece of the fish and was flying across to him with it, because he saw his mother coming towards him with a piece of fish. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. So he leaned his body forward and tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer. So he was waiting for his mother to come nearer to him as she flew across. But when she was just opposite to him, she halted, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. So when she came close to him, she halted, she didn't move. Her wings were also motionless. So she was in the air in such a way that you can see in this picture. So she was in the air in such a way that the fish in her beak was almost within the reach of his beak. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. He was surprised. He thought that his mother was coming to give him food, but she didn't do that. But he was maddened by the hunger, so he was very much tempted, and he dived at the fish. With a loud scream, he fell outward and downwards into space. So, as he was tempted highly, he dived into the space. He was no more in the cliff. Then a monstrous terror seized him, and his heart stood still. So he was so terrified that his heart stood still. His heart also stopped beating. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a minute. All this discomfort lasted a minute. The next moment he felt his wings spread out. So he spread his wings and then started flying in the next moment itself. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. So the wind blew forcefully against his breast feathers and then under his stomach and his wings. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air, so he felt that his wings were piercing the air. And he was not falling headlong now. Falling headlong now means falling our head first and the rest of the body following. Initially, at first time when he tried, he had that feeling of falling headlong. Now, no more such feeling he had. He was soaring gradually downward and outward. Soaring means flying upward. So he was flying upward, downward, and outward. So he was no longer afraid. So he was not afraid anymore. He just felt a bit dizzy. Bit dizzy means feeling unable to balance. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upward. So when he felt dizzy, once he flapped his wings and he started flying upward. Gur, 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 call her. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. So swooped means She flew down suddenly. As she flew down suddenly, her wings were making loud noise. He answered her with another scream. He also answered with another scream. Then his father flew over him, screaming. Father also now joined them. He was flying over him and screaming. He saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, cavorting and banking and soaring and diving. So now the whole family all around there. So they were his brothers and sister were cavorting, means leaping like a horse. And banking means flying with one wing higher than the other. So his brothers were coveting, banking, soaring, and diving. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly and commended himself to dive and soar and curve, shrieking shrilly. So he completely forgot his inability of flying in the past, and he was screaming shrilly and commended himself. Commended means he praised and encouraged himself to dive and soar and curve. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. So he was near the sea and he was flying over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him with little ridges moving over it, and he turned his beak sideways and carved amusedly. So there was a vast green sea, big, vast means very big, vast green sea beneath him, under him, with little ridges. Here, little ridges means the waves moving over it, and he turned his beak sideways and carved amusedly. Means what he cackled cheerfully. His parents and his brothers and sister had landed on this green flooring ahead of him. His parents and his siblings were standing on the surface of the water, and they were just in front of him. They were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. So they were calling him by gesture. Beckoning means calling by gesture. He dropped his leg to stand on the green sea. First, he dropped his leg on the water. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. So the moment he kept his legs on the water, it started sinking it. So he got frightened and attempted to rise again. He wanted to come out of the water by flapping his wings. But he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise, exhausted by the strange exercise. As he was tired and weak with hunger, he was not able to come out of the water because he was exhausted by the strange exercise of flying for the first time. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no further. So the moment his belly touched on the surface of the water, he started floating. So he was not sinking anymore. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. So the whole family was all around him, and they were screaming him, praising him, they were offering him and feeding him with the scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight because he had made his first flight, so they were feeding him. So in this lesson, the seagull, once he was very afraid to fly, he was hesitating to fly, because as he was driven by the hunger, he was able to shed his fear and succeeded in his flying.